guys, and welcome to Betwixt the Books. It's a solo content from me today. I wanted to review a couple of books that I read last year. Specifically that I read because on the Poptimist Discord channel, they read a book every month and have a sort of book club thing. They meet and discuss on the final Saturday of every month, usually at 8 a.m. in the morning when I am either A, sleeping, or B, at work / on my way to work. So I am never able to make those meetings, but I do on occasion read the books that they are reading, and so I wanted to talk about a few of those that I read last year today. The first book that I want to talk about is How to Pronounce Knife by Sovankam Tamavangsa. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that, and I should have looked up a video of how she pronounces her name. My bad. It is the winner of last year's Gayler Prize. We actually read it because it was shortlisted for the Gayler Prize, so we read it before it won its award. But if you don't know, that is a literary award for a Canadian author, so a Canadian author here. It is a collection of short stories. It's wicked short, all having to do with being recent immigrants to Canada, pretty much always Thailand, and it discusses from various perspectives what it's like to be multicultural in that case, to be from someplace and living somewhere else, whether it be from children's perspectives or adults' perspectives. There's a couple stories that talk about the economic impacts of that, of being in a lower economic bracket because of moving to a new country and what you used to do not necessarily mattering anymore. They were all very poignant, and if you're like a literary fiction person and you just want to dip into some short stories, I would recommend this collection. It's definitely worthwhile. If you like small little snippets into people's lives, it's one of those collections where you get to see sort of how thoughts and day-to-day stuff goes by, while also getting a good idea of what it's like to be something other than yourself. So, as a very white person who has been here her whole life, who's a third-generation American, so my parents dealt with some of the things that some of the characters in this book were dealing with. It's interesting to see what that's like. The next two books are more in my wheelhouse, as they are horror books. The first one I'm going to talk about is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. He is the author of such classics as Horror Store, the IKEA catalog horror book, and My Best Friend's Exorcism, the horror book that looks like it's like a 1980s VHS tape. So, quality. This one actually, I think, takes place in the same community and has to do with the characters from My Best Friend's Exorcism. Not the same group of teenage girls, but rather the moms or the parents in that situation. This one takes place in the 90s, whereas that one took place in the 80s. There's a group of women who have a book club, as you would think. They're in a book club that reads specifically true crime books. A guy moves into town, and the main character of this thinks that he is, if not a vampire, then some sort of predator who is focusing specifically on children. I struggled with this one, mostly because so much of this book was a husband gaslighting his wife constantly. And I think that was purposeful. It brings up and discusses how, because the vampire character in this, the bad guy character, preyed specifically on communities that are valued less, in this case African American communities that are lower income, that the white protagonist and her friends didn't really notice or care about it, and when it was brought up, like, people just sort of ignored it, thought they were doing drugs. So there is that element, and I appreciated that being there, but oh my god, how uncomfortable it was to watch this man just, like, literally gaslight his wife into taking psychiatric meds because he thought that she was crazy, and made her believe that she was crazy as well, which, I mean, obviously in a world where vampires are real, I could see why someone might think that. But yeah, that's what I struggled with. It wasn't a terrible book. It was long. It didn't necessarily need to be that long. And if you want to have something that you can hand to somebody and say like, hey, this is what gaslighting is, have them read this book and be like, do you see what this husband is doing? That's gaslighting. Do you see how crazy that is? And how easy it is to flip and manipulate people with that? So, as an example of gaslighting, great. As a horror book, it was quite slow. The imagery in here of the vampire was good, but it was rough. The last one is one of the most chatted about releases of 2020, and that is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I think we read this in August. It was almost like when it had come out. It was quite new. It may be September. But this one was obviously a Gothic novel set in 1950s Mexico. The protagonist of this one's a young woman who is sort of a social debutante type character who likes to go partying, things like that. Her cousin recently got married and she gets this letter from her that is quite worrying, where she seems to feel like her new husband is poisoning her or something along those lines. And she wants to go take care of her cousin and make sure that she's okay, that she hasn't been kidnapped by this family. The family that they go and see is a prominent white family in a smaller community in rural Mexico. And you get to see this discussion of colonization and both figuratively and literally. And you get your big spooky manor that's kind of falling apart and your rich family with their secrets, and there is a supernatural element to this. I understand both why people really enjoyed this book and also the problems that people had with it. I liked the ending, but I know a lot of people who discussed this book did not like the ending of it. And I think that choice was made specifically by the author because the classic Gothic hero was not something that she wanted to use in this one. A more quiet hero, but it does have a happy ending, so to speak, and not everybody wanted that. Also, I've heard some people complain that the big climax scene was kind of like cliche movie climax, that we've seen it before, but it was an enjoyable ride. So if you're someone that wants to try just a thriller mystery, this might be a good one for you. It was a bit repetitive. I did see sort of the supernatural twist coming. It went a little bit farther into the supernatural than I thought that it was going to initially. But it was interesting. It was nice to see some POC characters, even though it still very much felt like it was set in England. Like it didn't need to be set in Mexico, and like the characters being Mexican was cultural set dressing in a lot of ways. In trying to be a Gothic novel, maybe it went too far in one direction, because obviously the Gothic novel is very British based. Yeah, those are my complaints. It was okay. It was an okay read. I enjoyed it, but not perfect. If you want to join in on discussions for books like those or anything else, I'm going to leave the Poptimist Discord down below. I welcome you into the Discord. Everybody is welcome to join in. Whether or not you can join the discussions via Zoom or Discord discussing, because obviously I don't, that's up to you. Even if you just want to read the books and talk about them in chat, I highly recommend the community. It's really nice. We also just talk about booktube and bookish stuff in general. And yeah, so I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope 2021 is going well for you, and I will talk to you again soon.